What's up, everybody? This your boy Reckless with the German G Podcast. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. I got a special one for you guys today. A really good friend of mine, a brother of mine, my boy Chad Tate. First white male to pledge to any black fraternity, Alpha at that. Big ups to that. Let's get him in here and let's hear his story.
Hey,
What's up?
what's going on, bro? How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So let's get a little backstory of yourself. Let's tell the people about you a little bit.
Okay, where you want to start?
Let's start with what school you went to. What college you went to that you pledged out of?
I went to the University of South Florida in Tampa.
University of South Florida in Tampa. 1 second, sorry. All right, we got it. University of South Florida in Tampa. That's a good school, by the way. When I looked at Tampa, I used to love going to their basketball games. Amazing school. Most important question right here. What made you want to pledge Alpha?
All right, so we're starting with the big question first.
Yeah.
That's good. So you can interrupt me at any time. Because this story isn't simple. It's complicated. It's long.
We here for it. We here for it. Let's hear it.
All right, so I'm going to start kind of at the end, and then I'm going to go back to the beginning. So at the end, what happened was I was very deeply influenced by some guys that I met on that campus who were current brothers on the yard. They were current alphas. They were all in leadership roles, and I can talk more about that in a minute. But the lead up started when I was a little kid. I'm very blessed I consider myself very blessed to have grown up the way I grew up. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Virginia, a little town called Roanoke. And my parents were, they were products of the 60s in high school. My parents were born in the late 40s and early 50s. But even though we were in this little town in Southwest Virginia, it was a very diverse town even then. And my parents, I might hear country music when I was a little kid, but my parents were also friends of. They were lovers of Motown. I mean, the Iceman, Jerry Butler, and the Shirelles. I mean, I could go down the list of this huge repertoire of stuff that I grew up listening to. And it made an impact on me. I loved black music as a kid. It made an impression on me. By the time I was 10 years old, 1982, I'm 50. By the time I was 10 years old, I was already into hip hop. I'm listening to Curtis Blow. I was listening to what was hot on the East Coast, New York, in tiny little Roanoke, Virginia.
No.
And it was making an impact on me. I was listening to Grandmaster Flash, The Message, Hard Times, from Run DMC in 1984. So this stuff was having an impact on me by then. In addition to that, it was a diverse town. So my junior high school, before we moved to Tampa, which is where you heard a minute ago that I pledged, I went to high school in Tampa. But before that, in junior high school in Roanoke, it was a diverse group. Our snow queen was black. We would go to the Friday afternoon dances in the gym, and black girls would see me bobbing my head, and they'd come up to me and be like, "Hey, come out and we'll show you this or we'll show you that." And I just gravitated to that. And it was a love of music that really was the birth of all of this. Now, there's other stuff. There's a lot of stuff. There's stuff my grandparents things that you probably wouldn't imagine. My granddaddy, with a 10th grade education from coal country in Kentucky and West Virginia, teaching me as a little boy, be careful who you tell this to, but Adam and Eve weren't white. And I was like, whoa, really? How do we know that? He's like, well, do you remember in Genesis where they were? I was like, no. He's like, the Tigris and Euphrates River. I was like, okay, where's that? So he'd take me home and show me on the globe. He had a 10th grade education from coal country. Yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of built up. Let's fast forward to high school. Mm-hmm. High school, I'm an elite student. I'm in AP classes. I'm in dual enrollment classes. When I graduated from high school, I had 26 hours of college credit done. And the second semester of my senior year, I'm in this dual enrollment class. The professor comes in the second semester. We'd had American history and physics. He's like, hey, what do y'all want to learn second semester? And there's only 8 of us. This is a big school. There's like 800 and something of us. I don't know, 850 or 80. I don't know. In our class, there's only 8 of us in this class. It's very intimate. And so we were like, okay, so what can you teach? And so he goes down this list of things that he's, qualified to teach as a professor. He's a PhD. And he hits on intro to Black studies and intro to Black culture. And I kind of stopped for a second because remember now I'm this hip hop head and I think I'm enlightened and all this stuff. I'm like, what is that? And so effectively, it was just the Eyes on the Prize series, but kind of on steroids. He's talking about, Birmingham and Montgomery and what's going on in Mississippi in the 40s and 50s and 60s and, Bull Connor and Selma and like just there's this stuff that I never heard about these dogs and the bombings and again. Stuff wasn't kept from me as a kid. I went to good schools. I knew about slavery. I knew about Jim Crow. I didn't know some of these details because, again, this is a college level class my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about fire hoses, and I didn't know about. There's so much that just I didn't know about, and it made me mad, Jay. I'm telling you, man, I got mad. Because I thought I had a good education. I'm graduating with over a 4.0 grade point average. I'm being recruited by schools around the country. And there's this whole part of American history that I didn't know about. And I want to be real clear because I was talking about my parents earlier. My parents weren't trying to keep it from me either. When I went home and asked my mom, like, why didn't you tell me about this? She said, tell you about what? And I'm laying it out for her. She's like, honey, I never heard any of that. And my mom, she's in high school in the 60s, but she just never heard of it.
No.
So I what I figured out very quickly was I need to dive in. I'm going to dive in and find out what I don't know. And by the time I'm 18, I'm reading the autobiography of Malcolm X changed my life. I'm reading things like stuff about Marcus Garvey or Martin Delany, the father of Black nationalism, arguably, who was the first officer promoted as a Black man in the Union Army. There's all this stuff, I just buried myself in this part of my studies, I guess. As I got into college, I was way into. I'm wearing Malcolm X t-shirts to class. I got the. You remember the Malcolm X Nikes that had the crisscross strap?
Yeah.
I'm wearing this is how I'm going to class because I was mad and I'm an adolescent. So I joined the Black Student Union. I was looking for a place to sing. This is kind of the culmination of the answer to your question. Mm-hmm. I was looking for a place to sing, and my roommate was a white guy. He told me about all these places. He was an upperclassman. He's like, I can go to the concert chorus and the university singers and the blah, blah, blah. And I go to all this stuff. It just wasn't it wasn't that I didn't appreciate. It just wasn't that's not what I liked.
Yeah.
He said, well, the only other thing that I know of is the USF gospel choir, but you can't sing with them. And I was like, why not? And he's like, well, they're all black. So I said, where do they rehearse?
Hold my beer.
So I went. He's like, I don't know, but you've been talking about this Black Student Union thing. They would know. Go ask them. And so I showed up. I was on ROTC scholarship. So check this out. This is 1991. I'm on Army ROTC scholarship, engineering scholarship. I show up Thursday afternoon in my battle dress uniform, camos, to the Black Student Union to find out, hey, where's the gospel choir? And look, man, they were so cool to me. They were like, yeah, it's here. It's Thursday night and blah, blah, blah. So I showed up and they just welcomed me with open arms. And very quickly, I learned that the director of this gospel choir was an Alpha. I didn't know what Alpha was. I'd never heard of black fraternities. I'd been recruited, to go to Rush. They call it Rush for white fraternities. I just didn't understand that. I went to those. They had parties, and I went to them, and I was like, "These guys look like they're just buying friends." I have no problem making friends. I got lots of friends.
No.
But then I started meeting these just few guys. This director of the choir, the guy who was the president of that Black Student Union, was resigning his presidency so he could run to become the first Black student government president for University of South Florida. Most people don't know about South Florida. It's the second biggest school in the state. University of Florida was the biggest. South Florida had 47,000 kids in 1991.
And not too far from Ybor City.
Not too far from Ybor City. Yeah, it's not far at all. And so it's a little on the other side of town, but it's right. I mean, it's right there, man. I mean, so anyway, I start meeting these guys, and what I didn't know behind the scenes was those guys, and there was only 5 of them active, and there were a few they had graduated, but they were still close by. They were having conversations asking me, has anybody talked to Chad about whether he's interested in being an Alpha? Yeah. And so I got invited.
Them even had them conversations before coming to you. That just showed the respect that they had for you.
Man, that point you just made is so important. I mean, think about the risk these guys were taking. Yeah. Nobody had ever pledged anything, any of the black fraternities or sororities.
Yeah, keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Like, this man is the first white anything to pledge black anything, either male or female. Yeah.
I mean, there were other white guys. I mean, I don't know the real numbers, but I heard there were maybe 50 of us nationally out of 150,000 guys. Like, there was like I don't know. There were people ahead of me.
You was the first at your school?
I was first at my school.
First at your school, okay.
Yeah, my school. And so these guys were taking this enormous chance on me. They invited me out, and I was awestruck. Man, I was awestruck. When they finished explaining to me what Alpha meant to them, to our little group, the guys that ultimately became my line brothers or dropped and didn't come back or whatever. I resolved that night in my head. I just said, whatever it takes, if these men are going to afford me the opportunity to be a part of this, I'm going to do it.
So I got a question.
All right.
So do you think once you took that class with the 8 students, right?
Yep.
And once you found out the other side of history,
yeah,
you think that was the moment where you was like, all right, like I need to do this? Or like
I didn't know anything about the frat. What I knew was I needed to learn about this history.
Okay. And that just progressed it from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know. I still didn't understand about the frat. I didn't know. Like, I'm learning all about Martin Luther King and Thurgood Marshall and all these guys. Yeah. I could go down this list, but I didn't know what Alpha was. I didn't know that they were Alphas. I didn't know Martin Luther King was an Alpha. I didn't know Thurgood was an Alpha. I found all that out a little bit later as I was studying and learning. So but my headspace was, these guys are about uplifting the community that I understood to be underserved, and they're taking a chance on me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, think about, what if I was the wrong guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if I was the wrong guy?
If you were the wrong guy, like you said, they're taking a chance on you. It could have ended that chapter right there if you were the wrong guy. That chapter
It'd have
could have
been
been.
horrible for
Yeah.
everybody. For everybody.
Mhm.
And today, and they've all heard this from me over the years. The older I've gotten, because as I said, I'm 50 now. I was 19 when I pledged. The older I've gotten, the more I've understood. Because when you're a kid, all you're thinking about is, I want to make sure I don't disappoint them. I want to make sure that I'm worthy of this. I want to make sure that I'm. Listen, this is what it is. It's a little microcosm of something that's really important. I'm never going to know what it's like to be a black man, right? We agree,
Mhm.
right? I do know this, though. I know what it's like to be the only person that looks like me in a vast room, like 2,500 dudes,
Yeah.
right? I'm the only person who knows what it's like to be looked at sideways, even if it's a little microcosm of my life, right? I still got to go home and be white, but I felt like I had to be a super sphinxman. A sphinxman is somebody who's pledging an alpha fraternity.
Yeah.
So I had to know everything. It was tough, man, but
No room for mistake. Nothing.
no room for mistakes. But I made them, and I had to earn the respect of the guys that I was pledging with. Imagine you knew you wanted to be an alpha when you were 10 years old, right? And you get to college and you got the white boy online with you. Like, you didn't ask for that. So how does this, like, why are we doing this? How
Yeah.
did he get here? So there, some of those guys immediately welcomed me. Some of them not so much. And but today,
I'm glad you said that. You said some welcomed you and some not as much, and that's as you were going through your, what do they call it, your initiation. So it's saying that, like, once you made it through, and you're now an alpha. How did people react? How did white react? How did black people react? How did alpha react in general, from the people you pledged with to the elders from back in the day?
great question. I've got an echo. I just got this echo. A lot of the white folks that I knew from like high school or whatever, junior high or whatever, they couldn't figure it out. You've heard like he's a wannabe or what. I mean, you've heard all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that. I heard about some of that. But most of my friend, like true friends, that was never an issue. That, like, if people knew me, they just knew me. I'm a genuine person.
Yeah.
Black people at the school went absolutely nuts in a positive way. We get to my first step show was 20 days after I crossed.
Mhm.
I crossed on November 3rd. And the step show was November 23rd, and I didn't know anything about step. I had watched A Different World, but I didn't know what stepping was.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, man. When we all came out, people were going crazy. The smoke was going through or whatever. And when I'm doing this, you couldn't hear anything. We couldn't hear each other talking. We couldn't call steps. My line brothers would tell you this today, and the older brothers would tell you this today. It was crazy. And so it kind of gets to something you and I have talked about in the past. I think in some regards, race relations are way worse now than they were then. At that time, I'm telling you, the older guys, like the alumni guys, like guys that pledged in the 60s and 70s, they welcomed me like with open arms. The church that I started going to, it was a black church. I live in a black community. In the hood. I mean, in the church was in a tough neighborhood. These people, I mean, they just embraced me, and I was family immediately. And those guys, the older guys, in answer to your question, they invited me to speak at events that they had. I was one of the first things that I remember, I was invited to speak to fathers of Head Start children about race relations in America. And I'm 20. So, man, this is where I went from learning and understanding and appreciating to falling in love with a community.
Everybody keep in mind, like Chad didn't grow up as a white kid like that lived in the suburb. Chad grew up in the hood. You know
I grew up. I was in college. I was definitely in the hood. I grew up in I wasn't in the suburbs. I was in the city. A couple blocks from me a block from me was a very, very diverse apartment complex. It was probably at least 50% black. But I mean, I didn't grow up in a tough neighborhood. I don't want to come across disingenuous. I didn't grow up in a tough neighborhood, but I grew up around lots of different kinds of people and lots of black people. So yes, but in college, I lived in, I mean, I'll put it this way. There was a Domino's. It was about 2 blocks from my apartment, and they wouldn't deliver to us.
Won't deliver after the sun go down.
they got robbed too many times. They just went 2 blocks away, and they wouldn't come to our apartment complex. Yeah. So yes,
a lot of people don't realize a lot of major universities are in the middle of the hood, or the surrounding area of the hood.
Yeah, yeah. There were child rapes. There we had SWAT team. I mean, it was pretty tough. Yeah. It was pretty tough. That time of my life, I lived in that was the only time really in my life that I lived in a truly tough neighborhood. Like, I'll tell you a funny story real quick. I was walking from one apartment to another apartment where some of my other frat brothers lived around the corner. Same apartment complex, and a school bus was going down the street, and I was way bigger then than I am now. And and a little elementary school kid, he's probably 6th grade maybe. He's hanging out the window. He's like, "Hey, fat boy, are you ticklish?" Like, I'm just gonna get clowned just because I'm the white dude, in the hood. Yeah. So that's fine. I just got into it. I'll be who I am. I'm who I am. Country hillbilly accent.
How would you compare your bond you have with your brothers from day one to up until today?
It's interesting the metamorphosis, because when we very, very, very first started pledging, there was, we're all feeling each other out, and we had a line of 10. I was a 10. I was the tail. And I worked nights, so I would have to get to session late. Like, I had to get off work and scramble to get to session late at night. And so sometimes communication would be messed up because this is 1991. We ain't have no cell phones.
Yeah.
So we planned what we could plan.
I don't think there were pagers yet, were there?
Well, there were pagers, but most of us didn't afford none. Yeah. I mean, and they certainly weren't alphanumeric pagers. It'd be like beep, beep, and
Yeah.
dial the number back. And if you could get to a payphone,
It's
you
a
would.
payphone,
Right.
exactly.
So, but if I'm coming straight from work, whatever. So there wasn't a lot of communication. So I'd get there late or whatever, and I'd miss whatever they planned. Something could go wrong. But in answer to your question, we grew so close through that pledge process, and it was tough. But we grew so close through that pledge process that it was one of the greatest things I've ever been a part of in my life. And at the end, yes, there were 10 of us, and we all had different lives. We were different ages. Some of us were already in our careers. My eldest line brother, he was 27 pledging undergrad. 27 pledging undergrad. I was 19. I was the youngest.
Yeah.
So think about that gap. He had a real job. He had a real townhouse. He had a kid already. So so there's a big gap there. But with 10 guys, it's kind of cliquey a little bit, But we all loved each other. And today we have a group chat right now we group chat each other all the time. There are 9 of us left. One has passed away. There are 9 of us left. He's the eldest guy is still alive. He was actually the president of our chapter of our line, but we're all still close. And in some regards, we're closer because we appreciate each other more.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate our generation more. So that bond is never going to cease. And the guys who brought me in, those guys, I treasure them, and they know that. And they, the guy who was my dean of pledges, that's the guy who is kind of in charge of us as a line. Mm-hmm. If he were here with me right now, I'm confident that he would tell you that he's proud of me. He's proud of me.
I'm proud of you, brother. Let me tell you guys something. I've been knowing Chad for about almost 3 years now. Everything you hear out this man's mouth is real. Like, this is a real man. I consider him my brother. Society, you look at society's eyes. We're not supposed to be friends. We're not supposed
That's
to.
That's true.
Like,
You're
really
right.
not. We really not. But this is like I went and seen this man last year for Thanksgiving.
Yep, that's right.
It met his grandmother, his wife. Yeah, it's a good man. It's a really, really good man. Nothing but respect to you, Chad.
I appreciate you, bro. What else you got for me?
What was I gonna ask? Go back to the how did people react? Like once you pledged, right? Did you feel like you still had to prove yourself, or did you feel comfortable? Like not saying you just relaxed and fell off, but were you comfortable, or did you feel like you still had to prove yourself, or do you feel like to this day, do you still feel like you have to prove yourself?
I do, because I'm meeting new bros all the time, right? So, I belong to one of the most successful grad chapters in the Southeast. Our chapter has won chapter of the year multiple times since I've lived in Charlotte. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina now, by the way. And it's a big chapter. It's a prestigious chapter, and I still feel like I have to prove myself. I think I'm always going to feel like I have to prove myself. I don't think that's ever going to change, and I'm okay with that. It's fine. As I've expressed many times to brothers who, want to understand my story. How do I say this the right way? This fraternity wasn't founded for me. It wasn't founded for me.
No.
It was founded on a white Ivy League campus at Cornell University in 1906. And it was founded by Black men who needed to support each other because it was 1906.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll make it that simple, like that. So
No,
it was
no, that's
not
real.
founded
That's
for
real.
me. It was not founded for me. So I am, I'm a grateful beneficiary of everything that happened before me to even give me this chance. And so, yes, I'll always feel like A, I need to prove myself. B, I'm not doing enough. C, if somebody, if somebody, this is an interesting conundrum. I'm glad you brought this up. We didn't talk about this previously. I've had a very, very few times, two, maybe three times in 30 years, where an alpha brother didn't want to receive me or accept me or whatever. Maybe three times in 30 years. But I've had so many other brothers over the years, I mean hundreds and possibly thousands at this point, who've said, "You don't ever have to apologize for anything. You earned your letters just like we did. You were brought here just like we were. Irrespective of who you are, what you look like, that wasn't supposed to matter. Wasn't supposed to matter for us in American society. It's not supposed to matter for you in this fraternity." Now, does it? Yes. And do I respect that? Yes. And when I've had those few brothers who didn't want to receive me, it hurt me, but I understood it, man. I understood it.
Yeah.
I understood it.
That's real. That's real. That is definitely real. Definitely real. That's what's up, Chad. Man, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you letting me tell your story. Like I said, you already know the respect I have for you. Nothing but the utmost respect, man.
Hey,
Yeah,
man, I
like I
love you,
told
brother.
you,
You know that.
man. Love you too, man. Like when I called you last week, and I came. This is an honor to be able to, hear your story. Like I said, this story needs to be heard, and hopefully this reaches a lot of people. You know what I mean? It changes people's perspective on life and outlook on life of people in general. You know what I mean? I appreciate you, man. I love you, man. Um,
I hope as we start to close, I hope that there's nothing that I've said that any of my old friends, people who've known me since I was a kid, or any of my alpha brothers who went through experiences with me or know me now, I hope I've said nothing that either uh, embarrassed anyone or you felt like I misrepresented, because that was never my intention. I was very concerned about doing this because, once it's on the internet, it's there forever.
yeah,
And I told you that. So I've been a little bit concerned about it, but I've tried my best to, like, even correcting I didn't grow up in the hood.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm trying. I want to be as forthright as I can, but at the same time, I wanted to I wanted to. You wanted my story told, and I took that as a great honor, and so I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, brother. We're gonna go ahead and end it. All y'all have a great night. Y'all go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and go hit that little bell. It's somewhere down there, bell. So when notifications. It's your boy Reckless at the German G Podcast. We are out.